The path we walk in life is no yellow brick road. What we are told to do with our life, what we want to do with our life, matters thrust upon us long before we reach adulthood. And yet, we are told to figure it out by then. Will you attend college and study a course you may not truly care for? Will you coast from job to job, just trying to survive? Or do you perchance have a dream? One which you aim to seize, no matter the hardships faced chasing it. The present creeps into the past every moment that slips by us. If fate is predetermined, will you stand against it, or fall prey to it? How will you shape the future?
Down, what's holding me back now? Get my knapsack and pack now, attack now like ba-da-da-da-da and bam, pow. In a misplace, gotta get messy, interesting, kid gets busy. Ain't no they can't hold me down. Too much of anything can destroy the time you graduate. Can't see taking the risk for high as a man. I chose to be me, who I am. Fighting battle against my shadow. I gotta get it back, it's time I get it back. I wanna bring it back to the good old days.
Persona 2 is a game that actually exists. Well, sort of. Persona 2 is a fun game if you ignore the entire game part, which is why Persona 2 needs a remake. The few people who have played 2 hype this game to hell and back, and I can understand why, but the actual gameplay is just a miserable slog to sit through. Persona 1 and 2 are games that I'd say are actually mandatory to experience through Let's Plays. Considering Persona 2 tied with 3 for Atlus's poll on what games they should remake, and that we're actually getting a remake of 3, I genuinely hope this sets a path toward remaking 2. Mechanically, P2 is nothing like modern Persona is, but in storytelling, this is Persona through and through. That being said, I'll explain just why I think it needs to be remade. I'll mainly be going off of Innocent Sin, since that's the only playable entry, but I'll talk about Eternal Punishment when it's relevant. P2 is the most give-and-take experience I've had playing a game. On one hand, I think the characters are very fun and likable, and 2 has my favorite plot device gimmick out of all the entries. On the other hand, slow, tedious, boring gameplay, an annoyingly high random encounter rate, and lots of grinding. The game is not fun. Speaking of not fun, here's a not-so-fun fact. Did you know? The original Innocent Sin didn't release in the West, but Eternal Punishment did? Did you also know? The PSP version of Innocent Sin did release in the West, but the PSP version of Eternal Punishment didn't. Surely that hasn't negatively affected Persona 2's popularity in the West. Graphically, Innocent Sin doesn't hold up amazingly well. Of course it doesn't. It's a 24-year-old game that was given the lightest touch-up in visuals. Pretty sure the focus was on just getting the game on more modern hardware, and less so updating the gameplay to better adhere to modern advancements. The only noticeable difference between the two is the general UI being more stylized but still simplistic. Other than that, the pop-up portraits are in here, kind of a series staple now, so it's a nice touch. I don't think there's much else to say. It's a game from 1999 re-released, and a story. The gameplay itself, this is a beast of its own. As I said before, I didn't enjoy it on average. P2 is slower paced and less flashy than modern entries, and as a result can end up feeling very dull and unengaging to play through. Though I say this, it is more engaging than trying to play the original PS1 version. The difficulty in the PSP version is much lower than the original, which is a put-off for some, but when the gameplay is as dreadful as 2's, I really don't care about the in-game difficulty, considering the general difficulty of playing it in the first place. In terms of combat, Persona 2 has 2 more elements than other entries, with Aqua and Magma moves. In addition to this, there's a fusion spell system, where using a list of certain skills in a specific order will... It's interesting on paper, but the game devolves to just spamming the best fusion spells until the battle's over. As I mentioned, there's turn order. You can choose which order you set your party's attacks. This makes it so you can see everyone's attack priority in battle. While I'm not a huge fan of this system overall, I do appreciate controlling the order because that at least adds a layer of strategizing that's actually engaging gameplay. A massive design flaw is...
There's no reason to keep Bufu once you have access to Bufula.
Fucking idiot. This is true in Persona 2, and only Persona 2. You see, for some reason, they decided that every skill on your equipped persona would all have the same SP cost, making it so there would actually be zero reason to use a weaker skill, or even a single hit skill. Every persona only starts with 1 or 2 skills and requires you to grind them in battle to gain skills. That doesn't sound awful on paper, but in practice, they're a persona that will start with weak offensive moves, making it difficult and time-consuming to bother grinding them, all for a lacking payoff. Not to mention, you can't even fuse them, so any investment in a persona is eventually lost entirely. How do you get personas, you may ask? Well, now we'll talk about the negotiation system. It's abhorrent. Demons have 4 aspects you appeal to. You can appeal to happy, eager, anger, and scared. Not sure about the wording on these. Depending on your negotiations, you'll lean into one of these, and the following will happen. Happy will cause them to make a pact with you if you're high enough level. This pact lets you ask them for favors. One such favor is spreading rumors, which can make other demons have stronger or weaker moves on them. I didn't use it too much since it didn't seem very useful, so admittedly I may have missed out on something with this. Alternatively, they can give you blank tarot cards, but we'll get to that later. Anger, which just ends negotiations entirely. Scared makes them run away, and eager, which makes them give you tarot cards for the arcana they represent. In P2, since the battles are less engaging, slow, and more frequent given the horde encounter rate, I would tend to try and run and realize I would almost never get away. If you want to run away, just negotiate. I thought the low odds of getting away was just a way to encourage you to negotiate instead, but no. I went back and replayed 3, and even then, running away wasn't a guarantee. Damn! It's almost like running away was meant for desperate escapes, and not avoiding the core fucking gameplay. If only the gameplay wasn't what I wanted to avoid. Negotiation itself isn't super complex, but it's the fact you need to grind it on top of actual battles that makes it an absolute drag. Unlike every other entry, even 1 got this right, you don't fuse personas or obtain them in battle. You have to meticulously grind tarot cards from demons. Then you're supposed to catch them into Igor so he can summon a persona for you. So, if you want a persona, you have to find an enemy of that arcana. You can't revisit old dungeons, by the way. Figure out of the 20 different negotiation options which makes them eager, then just do that on loop until you have enough tarot cards to summon the persona you want. You can also get blank tarot cards instead, as mentioned earlier, then take those to Demon Painter, who can make them any arcana you want. This means you'd still be farming negotiations either way. Actually remove this system and put fusion back in. I can't think of a single moment where I thought, this was an interesting new mechanic for this series. It just added more grinding to a game that already had far too much of it. It feels like this was an attempt to try and distinguish Persona from mainline SMT mechanically, but they chose to remove this figurative engine and replace it with a hamster wheel. With no hamster! If for some reason we were to keep this system, there's a lot to improve. Firstly, just make blank tarot cards available at shops. Make them a price that early game's a bit pricey, but mid to late game aren't breaking the bank. It can also serve as a way to engage in rumor mongering for lower prices. Another fix is making it so when you negotiate with the demon, the battle doesn't just end sometimes. The need to grind tarot cards and XP separately just made the game drag longer. Or, better yet, just make enemies drop tarot cards after battle. And for God's sake, just let personas join you like in 5. Originally there was going to be a rant section where I went on about how the ultimate personas can be entirely missed and how infuriating and disappointing it was to beat the game without them, but apparently some people didn't know you could even do that. In my defense, the dungeon where this happens sucks ass. Wait, I can say that about every dungeon in the game. If there were indicators telling me what was going on, my brain made the apt decision to ignore them so it could be over sooner. This wouldn't have been so bad if the Prime versions of the starting personas didn't blow ass. A cool thing in 2 is that there are scenes where your party members face a personal challenge, and if you choose not to intervene, you get their Prime persona down the line. This is really neat mechanically, but none of them were remotely good in the first place. And they certainly weren't gonna fill in for the ultimate personas. As I mentioned earlier in the video, P2 actually has my favorite plot device gimmick in the series. So I'd actually like to talk about it and its application to the story, and as a gameplay mechanic. Persona 5 has the cognitive world, Persona 4 has the Midnight Channel, Persona 3 has Tartarus, and Persona 2 has rumors. From the start of the game it's revealed that rumors are coming true, so you soon pick up the ability to spread rumors to affect things around you. This is such an amazing concept as a mechanic and plot device. After you beat the first boss, you're asked whether they died or not. In that moment, I popped off so fucking hard thinking my choice mattered, because whatever I said would be a rumor, therefore coming true. Since I said yes, I never found out this mattered in game. But if you say no, they come back at the end of the game and solo the enemies at school. Outside of this, I never really felt like the gimmick was implemented in a meaningful way as a mechanic. Other than gameplay, this is one of the things I really want to see have better implementation. More meaningful decisions and spreading rumors. Most of the game I didn't bother spreading rumors because it never really seemed like it did anything useful. Rumor spreading seemed to just be a way to update shop inventories and prices and not much else. Music has always been a huge sticking point for Persona games, and 2's no slouch either. Though you probably don't hear much about 2's because it's so massively understated in the game. Tatsuya has a theme song. This song plays once at the start of the game, then never again. That's the kind of care we're working with for music implementation. I'm starting to hear more and more people use music from 2 in their videos. Unsure if it's an appreciation for these underrated tracks or them insisting I'm not like other YouTubers, I watched a Persona 2 Let's Play. The thing about that though is they always use the same 3 tracks. This is probably because a lot of 2's musical library doesn't really lend itself to being chill background music in general. But I guess they lend themselves well enough to a rock outbreak. Unless you're a psychopath like me, and listen to entire soundtracks of games, there are a lot of really good tracks that you just won't remember because they came and went in the blink of an eye during the game. Or they were dungeon themes and would get interrupted every 5 seconds with dun dun dun! Dun dun dun! Dun dun dun! Dun dun dun! I definitely think P2's Ost is solid, but it's nowhere near as expansive as modern titles. Not to mention, there's only a small handful of vocal tracks in the game. Not to say 2's soundtrack is bad, it just has less presence because of the few vocal tracks in my opinion. So while I don't think it necessarily needs to entirely change the musical theming of 2, they definitely need to do a better job managing the soundtrack. Now that I've talked to you about what should be remade, let me tell you why it should be remade. The characters. Maya is the type of character I hate the most. Theme, a goody-goody. This archetype of character is very easy to make bland, though Maya does have a distinct personality and a more defined positive outlook than most. It doesn't win me over though. Considering how much people fawn over her, she's just okay. If we're making a tier list for goody-goody characters, it's looking like this. Just very meh. And for a main character, not feeling it. Maybe she steps it up in Eternal Punishment. Tatsuya is a silent protagonist with a dark past looming over him. They really don't make Persona this serious anymore. This motherfucker makes motorcycle noises 5 minutes into the game while Akechi hits the goddamn gritty. Given Tatsuya's limited characterization being a silent protagonist, there's enough bits peppered in there to make me actually appreciate him as a character. Given in Eternal Punishment, Tatsuya is more of a character, but I can't really speak to that personally. Akechi, my beloved. If I'm being honest, Akechi carries the entirety of P2 on his back. From the get-go, he makes a strong impression as the goofy, delinquent archetype. I love Kanji, but goddamn if I don't love my baby boy just a bit more. Akechi might as well be the main character as far as I'm concerned, since he has the most character development throughout the story. He has such a compelling character arc, and that's why he's my little man. Also, he nicknames Lisa Ginkgo, which is the equivalent of just calling her white girl. He was so real for this. Lisa is best girl, hands down. She's constantly at odds with Akechi, creating a fun character dynamic between the two throughout the entire story. She also knows Cantonese. Now, maybe I'm just smooth-brained, but I don't remember it ever being explained why she knows Cantonese. Maybe it's an Eternal Punishment, or maybe I just missed that detail. Her full name is Lisa Silverman, the most I am an American character name, and she's speaking Cantonese in Japan. Creates a lot of intrigue around her character. Also, her dad is a prehistoric weeb. Lisa also undergoes a serious character arc that I think more people need to witness. Yukino is, she's in the game. There's not a whole lot to go off of on her character from 2 specifically. She's just a cool and responsible adult, and there's not much else you get from her in P2. Yukino's involvement with the plot is a minor thread with a character that shows up like 2 or 3 times, and it just resolves at the end of the game, unceremoniously. This is definitely something that I'd hope to be improved upon in a remake. When it came up, I was really interested where it was going, then it just went nowhere. At the end of the game, they go, "Oh yeah, better resolve that, huh?" It doesn't feel earned, and I don't care about it because neither did the main story. I don't know what the hell Atlus was thinking at the time, because they really thought they had an all-star cast with Persona 1, considering they insisted on dumping a ton of them into 2 for seemingly no real good reason. For clarity, I did play some of 1 and I actually did like the cast, but come on now. They didn't even give us Brown! What? Hell, the only character that's a one-man all-star cast isn't even in Innocent Sin. They don't call him number 1 for nothing, baby. People really seem to love June, but I'm out on this one.
You look like the yellow M&M today.
I don't look anything like this guy.
Considering he suffers from final party member syndrome, being at the end of the game limits how much time you end up having with him. And while I liked what was there, it didn't really feel like it was explored enough for me to actually care about him by the game's end. I would hope, if anything, a remake would better flesh out June. Especially considering the cast from Innocent Sin, barring Tatsuya, are just minor characters in Eternal Punishment, which is depressing honestly, since I hoped Eternal Punishment would be his chance to shine, but I guess not. Ulala makes a brief appearance in Innocent Sin, but is a main party member in Eternal Punishment. Ulala is the only Persona character who has canonically said fuck.
Don't underestimate me, you bastard!
So she goes high up on the power ranking tier list. She's a very violent, hot-headed woman who is shown to not have a good track record with men. That being said, I can fix her. Therefore, best girl in Eternal Punishment. Maeda's never stood a chance in either game. Katsuya also makes a brief appearance in Innocent Sin that I think you can miss. It's cool to sprinkle in more backstory for Tatsuya. In Eternal Punishment, he's a main party member, and from the little time I got to know his character, he seemed like a very by-the-books officer with a bit of a dry sense of humor and cynical personality, so I'm interested in him. Balfu is the actual real best girl. Look at this man. This man has your credit card information. Balfu from the very beginning generates a ton of interest, and he almost makes me want to grit my teeth through Eternal Punishment. Alas, fuck this shit. Then you have Nanjo and Eriko from Persona 1 who joined the party. From the little bit of 1 I played, Nanjo is the GOAT. Eriko is interesting, but she's also not a guaranteed party member in 1. Minor side tangent, but this leads into the next topic. It took until very recently for us to get an English patch for the PSP version of Eternal Punishment, so the only way you could play it was the original PS1 version, or just learn Japanese, which aren't very appealing options. Now, I would never advise you to do anything that could be considered illegal, so Atlus, remake the games so no one needs to. I'm utterly baffled to see people asking for ports while fully being opposed to a remake. Are you delusional? Or are you just looking at it solely from the perspective of wanting to play it again officially? Look, I get it. Persona 2 isn't exactly accessible, but I don't believe porting PSP games to modern platforms is actually going to boost its overall popularity or success. More people need to experience these stories, and as they are now, most people that pick up a port are going to be turned off by the dated gameplay that makes 2 a slog to sit through. I'm not saying Persona 2 needs the calendar system or social links forced into it, but what I am saying is, the flow of gameplay has to be as fluid and engaging as modern titles. If it looks and plays like modern Persona, then it's perfect. Well, I wouldn't be opposed to adding social links to 2. It's a hell of an undertaking finding a way to organically weave it into 2's DNA. If you're the type that's adamant that never happened, I wouldn't really worry too much about them doing it in the first place. Considering Atlus decided Fest and Portable's content wasn't worth including for a remake of 3, I assume they don't want to do anything that could risk pushing the original vision off balance. Without implementing S-links in the calendar, if the gameplay shifts to reflect modern Persona, a remake containing the full duology story would likely round out to about the same total playtime of a modern Persona, making it a true modern entry. All that being said, I just want to see the games remade, period. If Atlus decides to remake Persona 1 instead, I'll be sad, but I won't resent the decision. Persona is a series that explores what it really means to be human, something we all naturally pick up on. So there's no harm in retelling any of its stories. Not to mention, a sizable amount of one's cast reappears in 2, so it would actually help to have them established better first. Persona 2's exploration of the human condition, however, is one that I cherish dearly. You may not be able to control the future, but you can always find your place in it. That's why I think it should be retold rather than resold. Persona 2 tells a story that deserves to be accessible to a wider audience. That's why Persona 2 is a story worth retelling. I've heard Atlus wants to remake Persona 2, but alas, that is only a rumor.
Electric Slug and Oda special.
Where's the part? Where's the
which
part
takes
where
up
you
a cell
talk
on the
about
persona
a
and said
Bufu,
persona
you
needs to be equipped
stupid
with the
fuck?
ability to even. This mechanic only creates frustration, and it mostly happens
Oh, I
during
bet it
boss
creates
fights when you have
frustration.
massive damage ability.
What? Where is it?
So incredibly long animations you just have to sit through, like Kamoshida's lustful sip.
Me when I have ADHD.
Since you can knock down an enemy, kill a different enemy, and then at times, even though there's only one enemy left, it will not trigger an interrogation. I was unable to discern what made the difference between times it did and times it didn't. Every time you meet a new enemy, the first thing you're going to do is try out every element that you have access to until you find out which one they're weak to. Then, once you figure that out, every subsequent encounter would say,
Wait a minute, did he just describe how you're supposed to be playing the game? He knows how to play the game, and he somehow didn't know how to do that the entire time he played through the game.
a demon mechanic, bravely default and brave.
Why game not like other
Have the
game?
material of things you
Oh, here we
learn
finally!
new abilities and